Thanks for joining us today, guys. Really excited today to have Brandon Neely with us to share a little bit about his background going from entrepreneur, retail, brick and mortar into the financial space, and loads of insights to share that I know will impact your lives. So excited to have Brandon here. Brandon, you mind introducing yourself to the audience to get us started?
Yeah, I'm Brandon Neely. I run with my wife, Wealth Wisdom Financial Partners. I would say she's more of the brains. I'm more of the out there kind of thing. As a coffee shop owner, people might relate to this. I'm the front of the house person. She's the back of the house person. You need both in a business. And so we are been in business together now using our knowledge of what we did right previously and what we did wrong and wish we would have done different. I'm sure we'll talk about. And now we've been doing Wealth Wisdom Financial for 4 years and doing profit first, infinite banking, really just thinking about cash flow and how you can manage cash flow to expand your wealth versus the other way around, that a lot of people like the banks want you to just give it to them and let them figure it out. Where I like to say, no, don't do what the banks tell you to do what the banks do and understand the system of money.
That's awesome. With your, what came first, relationship with the wife or business partner with the wife?
Oh, relationship first, for sure. Like we met through our church community. And learned about each other. And then a couple years in, I had the bright idea of let's start a coffee shop and do this. And then she has to make it happen. And we started coming up with the idea around 2007. We got married in 2006, and that's probably the worst time to start a business, right? In the recession times. But we didn't know what the heck we were doing.
Lots of challenges, right? That you don't face otherwise. Any quick tips or words of advice for those who are in business with their spouse?
Oh, probably any advice that I would say that not even in business, but in relationship is communicate. That's a very, very important thing. That's it with your money, with anybody. Communication will solve a lot. And then know if you're in business with your spouse, what I learned is you can't talk business all the time. You need to have separation time. So we have date night that we've instituted because in the second year of our business, it was really, really difficult. Like almost wrecked everything, including our marriage. What we needed to institute was date night. And one of the rules of date night is we can't talk about work, which is very hard when you work together.
When it's top of mind, right? And key partner. Appreciate that. As you were building in the coffee shop and you reached that point of profitability, what was your strategic framework of where to allocate profit, where to allocate, that cash flow? Did it go back into the business? Did you expand to more locations? Did you buy the bigger house? What were some of those thought processes and kind of what did you go through?
Yeah, I think that our business name was Overflow. And what I learned is we were all about like helping other people. We were about to expand to multiple locations. That was the idea of like, hey, how do we like take over more? How do we do more and really make a bigger impact? And one of the things I learned is we weren't really taking care of ourselves personally. And I think there's two types of business owners. There's the ones that overpay themselves, right? They're the ones that have the cars and all kinds of crazy stuff that the business is paying for, right? And then you have the other ones that reinvest everything into the business and they never take a dime. And they're like, yeah, eventually I'm going to pay myself. Eventually that's going to happen, right? But they don't, there's not a good in between. We were on that other side of eventually it's going to happen. And I remember talking to one of my attorneys and I said, look, we're doing great. We've taking care of all of our business debt. We're growing. This is happening. And he asked, how much are you paying yourself? I said, well, let's not talk about that. And I came back from that meeting really saying, oh, that's not good. We need to make a change, and we needed to start paying ourselves, because sometimes it's a, I don't know, kind of like a martyrdom thing or something. We're like, yeah, it'll work out. I can take one for the team. And your customers will do the same thing. They're like, yeah, but you love it. You don't need to get paid. You love it. And you probably heard that before, right? And
yeah, don't pass anything on to me. I don't need extra cost. You love being the martyr, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, yeah, but I love to eat food too, like you do. And that's just it's an interesting thing when we go into business, especially new business. People think that, oh, well, we just do it because of passion. I'm like, well, no, we need to be paid as well. And what I've learned in the process of this is, if you want to exit your business, you need to be paying yourself, because no one is going to just buy a business where they say, oh, I can buy this business and make less than minimum wage. That sounds like a great idea. Who's going to buy that business? Seriously. So that seems a bit ridiculous. So that's kind of where I came from.
So as you were going through this, right, it sounds like that was a meeting with the attorney was a pivotal moment, something that sticks with you. How did you transition from, being that martyr, not, paying yourself, to, successful exit? What were some of those major steps that you took to kind of build that profitability, grow that profitability?
Yeah, one was understanding how money works. I had watched a documentary, because in our back of our coffee shop, we had an auditorium there. And one of my friends, who's now a mentor of mine, was a financial professional. And he showed this documentary, Banking with Life. And we were like, our biggest risk is us. Our biggest investment is us. How am I going to grow this and think about the future and all of that? So we found about the infinite banking concept, started our policies, saving, and we used our policies to get out of that high interest debt, because that was the thing in the coffee shop, right? Every time I'd get a statement, or measuring things, you're like, man, Uncle Sam, he's never here, and he gets a lot of money for everything, all the fees, right? And the banks, seriously, you run a and you guys might not be on this, right? The listeners, you might be just using your credit card. But if you're on the receiving end of the credit card and seeing those percentages, 2.5% fees going away, I'm just like, holy crap, all of this money, these guys never show up to work. And just saying, okay, how do I understand this? How do I get more control about that? But also knowing that emergencies happen. So I set up this contingency, access to capital that I needed, savings for my future, but I was able to advance and use that future money to get out of I don't know what, we had a flood that happened in the business. Literally, I'm at the gym, and my staff calls me and says, the store is falling apart. You need to come here right now. I was like, I think you're being a little dramatic. Well, look at the video, and literally the store is falling apart. We need to get there. So we get there. They had, as one of those freak storms, there was roof repair, and the whole thing was falling apart in minutes. I was like, oh my gosh, crying, right? Then through that, we were able to use our cash value and our policy to overcome the emergency, right? Because unfortunately, having a claim and doing all that takes some time, but your bills still keep coming. I could have used a credit card, right? Or something, and then I would have been worse off. So use that for the line of credit for a short time. And during that time, in that flood, we found out that my wife was pregnant about a month later or 2 months later, somewhere in there. And we're like, oh, well, that was probably not a good idea for her to be wading through floodwater. But it is what it is. And I had a person come to me a lot saying, what's your number? If you want to sell the business, like, what's your number? And he came to me one day and I was like, what's your number? Probably not the best way for doing evaluation. But I was like, I was, kind of aggravated with some stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm out. I want to do something different. And he threw it out and we were able to ultimately transition that business because a new transition was coming, like a child. And we needed to think through it. So those are some things I learned. There's a couple things I tell every business owner is know that you're called to this, right? But you need to know, because if it's going to be hard, there's going to be ups and downs. It's not always up and to the right that people think. There is that thing called volatility. And you're going to think that mom and dad and everybody's going to buy your stuff. Usually that's not the case, right? Then have a team around you that care about you, right? When things hit the fan, that team of people. And then the third is know your numbers. Like most business owners, you'd be surprised, don't know their numbers. And I think that's ridiculous, but know your numbers.
Very ridiculous. You can't manage it if you don't know your numbers, right? Particularly from a financial set. So you had mentioned in the beginning, Profit First Certified, that's through Michalowicz's program, I'm assuming, coming out of his Profit First book. Where did that come along in your journey for you?
Yeah, we had listened to that. I don't know. It was one of the best Christmas presents I could give my wife, because we were listening to his podcast, and they said, if you write a review, we'll send you a book. I was like, all right, I'm going to write a review and get a book. And so then I got the book and wrapped it. It was right before Christmas, and wrapped it and put it under the tree. And my wife loved the book. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I didn't pay for this Christmas present. And through that, we learned a lot. We were doing a lot of good things right. But that system of what they call target allocation percentages really helped us to say, oh, this is what we were thinking, but we didn't have the words. And how do we best position, right? Because what Mike Michalowicz says is most businesses are cash-eating monsters. They will just want more, continue to want more. How do we build a business that loves us, that we love and loves us back?
Yeah, welcome to consumerism on top of that as well, right? More,
right.
more cash-eating monster. It becomes very challenging.
And marketing in general. Everything has a plan for your money. That's why know your numbers, to be able to then say, okay, what's my plan? Because how many pitches do you get that says, I can solve your marketing plan, or I can solve this, and we buy this program and we forget that we bought that program? That it's into our OpEx.
Yeah. All those reoccurring charges on these SaaS platforms that just sit in the background and eat away, right? When you forget about them. So that when you gave her that book and kind of started implementing, what was the biggest change in your guys' business? Was it just a mental mind shift, or was there actually something in terms of how you were looking at it from an operational perspective, or how you approached it that had the biggest impact for you?
I think some was definitely looking at the business as a coffee shop, right? It is not the most profitable business to start, right? In general. There's a book called Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. In that book, he says, if you want to be a millionaire, don't start a coffee shop. He said that a couple times, and I was like, man, I wish I would have read that previously. But we didn't get into it to make $1 million. We get into it, make a difference. But what it really helped us to look at is saying, okay, as I'm having these 5 accounts, which is taxes, right? You have a tax account, you have your OPEX, you have your owner's pay, you have your profit, right? And then you have your income account. I think I'm missing OPEX. I'm missing something. But 50% is owner's pay, theoretically. 30% is to OPEX, 15% towards taxes. Oh, and then your profit account, 5% towards profit, right? That's TAPS. Well, as you run a brick and mortar business, your OPEX might be 70, 80%, right? And there's little for the owner. So what I learned in that is saying, okay, maybe I need to transition my business, the type of business I do, to less overhead, right? Rent, all those things. That was a big shift for us. And that's why I love real estate investors or thinking in those realms, because it's thinking it's an easier business model than a brick and mortar food service, because the margins in food is not the best. Alcohol, maybe. But.
So you realized kind of wanted to go into a different industry. How did you get from that thought into financial services, infinite banking?
Yeah. So after the flood happened, and as we're expecting a baby, we're like, all right, well, we can't keep doing this. It's illegal to have a baby behind the bar, right? There's other things that we need to reverse engineer, think through strategically, what do we want to do? And my wife's pregnant. So my mentor had a job opening. We're gonna sell the business, and my wife's like, you're gonna go get a job. I was like, all right, I don't know if I'm gonna be employable. I haven't really worked in a number of years, but I'm gonna be a dad, so I got to do something. So I applied to work with my mentor, and he said, no, you're too entrepreneurial. I was like, oh, that sucks. I thought I'd be good at this because I keep sending you clients. And then he comes back to me a month or two later, and he's like, I have an idea. How about you and your wife do this together, and I'll coach you? I was like, that sounds awesome. I'll do that. And she's 7 months pregnant at the time, so no one's going to hire her anyway. So we were like, all right, well, we'll do that. And so we sold the business, expecting a baby, and launching a new business in the financial services world, right? And not knowing that there's a lot of opinions about infinite banking and whole life insurance and annuities. All we knew was this has really helped us. Let's help other people with it. And then we got into it and said, oh, there's a lot of people who don't like this kind of thing. Anyway, I don't know why, but.
So how did you go from there to defining your niche in terms of, how you differentiated and where you focused in with your clients?
Yeah, I think in the beginning we were like, well, let's just help everybody, right? And that was our first business, was Grandma's Wealth, or as we led into this, we created Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. The tagline was, sometimes intelligence skips a generation. All about savers, right? And thinking through, because, I look at right now our system and the market. Wall Street is at an all-time high, even though we've gone down a lot. But yet a lot of people are not doing much better and saying, okay, what happened there? The 401k was supposed to be our savior, right? So how do we change from that? So that's where Grandma's Wealth Wisdom of being savers, like spending less than you make, that whole thing of profit first just made sense. And then moving more into business owners has been a kind of evolving, because again, when I moved into the financial services side, I'm like, I don't know anything about this. I don't know. I just ran a coffee shop. That's all I did. But then I've learned, oh no, you know what we did? We opened a coffee shop, we ran a coffee shop, and we sold a coffee shop. That's very different than we opened a coffee shop and we closed a coffee shop within a year because we were ridiculous, right? We were pretty good at this. Now, could we have been better? Probably, but now we've learned a lot of systems of what to do, what not to do, that I want to help people. And that's why I love working with business owners or self-employed people to say, okay, how do you reverse architect your life? Because your business really is only meant to help you amplify what you want to do on the other side too, right? Have a healthy family life too. And it's a balance, right? So that's kind of where I've moved into saying, no, we love working with business owners, self-employed, and making sure that they thrive, not just barely survive. And when the market does something, or when the Fed says something, or COVID, I want to be able to help them sustain. And that's what Profit First does too.
As you've kind of gone through your journey, right? And you're looking back, what advice would you give an entrepreneur who's on that front end and trying to figure things out of where to allocate profit or cash flow?
Yeah, I think it all depends on where they're at in the business and in their own personal life, right? So sometimes you need to pay yourself, right? Really doing a target allocation, percentages, and looking and saying, okay, how much am I spending? Am I spending way too much on staff or office building or whatever it is? I don't know. To really look at that in a strategic way, looking at the math and not just the emotions of I want this or that, but the math, let the math speak. And at the same time, thinking about what you think you know may not be so, right? What Dave Ramsey says may be different, right? What Robert Kiyosaki says may not work in your case, right? So learning and questioning everything, even us, right? And I tell people a lot whenever I use, like I help people with policy loans for their growing their business. They might use a policy loan. And I said, depends on, pay premium versus pay a loan. It all depends on what's coming up. Are you going to buy another building soon? Or, those kind of things are very different, but you have to be your own CFO. I think you had in the last one being your own CEO or something like that. Too many people wait until they have a CFO and then they're like, oh, I'll give that to the CFO. I'm like, well, no, you're the chief financial officer in your business, and you should be that for a long time. And even if you have a CFO, you're still the chief financial officer in your business that has to look at everything. Even if there's a CEO, CFO, CMO, you're the big guy or girl that's looking and saying, okay, how's this all playing together? And you change percentages based off of certain things. And it's not a big thing. It's maybe a 1%, 2%.
So as you've gotten to the stage that you're at today, what's changed the most in terms of, where you allocate profit? Obviously, it sounds like you have less overhead, more profit margin, right?
Yeah.
Better business, generally speaking, from the amount of time that needs to be invested for the returns you're getting out. What has that resulted in terms of, how you're investing and what that looks like, putting back into the business versus, personal versus, personal growth, whatever that may be?
Oh, I think it's, I have a flow chart for everything. And we have a YouTube video because we do, again, Profit First and infinite banking. And I've showed this to some clients. I'm like, yeah, so it'll flow from here to here, and I'll give myself a loan for my business. So my business, literally, I just closed on a building for my office condo, right? Personally owned from my own personal policies, right? But my tenant is me, my business, giving myself money as a renter. I'm the best renter there will be because I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to ruin stuff, right? And I'm thinking like a bank in all the areas, and I'm controlling that. I still use some of the bank's money too, by the way, but most of it was from my policy, and I'm reinvesting there. I tell people, as far as reinvesting, Why are we divesting from our own businesses and hoping that Tesla gives us stock options or whatever, I don't know, whatever, when we should be reinvesting and reusing in a more powerful way. Now, I also have in my systems, I have Mad Money and other things that is just like fun money that I can blow, because according to Profit First, I take a percentage of profit that I use for fun, which is really hard when you're a business owner sometimes. And I have this Mad Money account that I'm just like, oh, what do I do with $10,000? I don't even spend that much money. So it's really fun to sometimes not do anything with it. But to have the capability that I can do whatever.
That's awesome. What's as we're approaching the end of time here, Brandon, what's the most exciting thing you're working on today?
Yeah, I think our website, for sure. It's if you go to, I don't know, wealthwisdomfp.com, and then we've created what we call the STILL method. And really what I think about with the STILL method, it's what we've been doing with our clients all the time. We just didn't have an acronym for it. Now, this is what people love, is having fancy acronyms. So this is really fun to think about. The world is in chaos, right? It's confusing. If it's haphazard, it's anxious, it's overwhelming and stressful. Think about taxes. It's confusing, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful. This is why we avoid it, right? Finances in general, we say the same thing and we just run from it, right? So that's not healthy. That's why we're all like depressed and everything else, because we're in that chaos, right? But what we need is still, right? Still is setting your sights. You have to know where you want to go, at least have an idea, not just going to Disney World. Maybe, that might be part of it, but that's some people, that's all they've thought about is their sights. I want to, and they have no forward thinking. So as a business owner, set some forward thinking, like set that time. There's what was that? The Road Less Stupid, having some time to really ask questions, right? What did he call that? I forget. But so setting your sights, track your in and out. That's budgeting for some people, but it's really just looking at the ins and outs, of anything. If it's exercise, you track your gym time, or, having a date night, you got to make sure you're tracking. Inspect your progress. You got to look back and inspect to make sure we're doing okay. Look for 1% adjustments and live deliberately. I love helping people live deliberately when it comes to their money. That's the power. And so if you want the STILL method, it's just a little framework of asking yourself the questions, and only you can answer them, right?
That's awesome. Appreciate that insight for the listeners. For those who want to learn more either about the STILL method, about what you're doing, what you offer, Brandon, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, if you go to wealthwisdomfp.com, you can find me there. You can find our YouTube channel. If you look up Wealth Wisdom Financial on YouTube or on podcast, you'll find us there. And if you want that STILL method playbook, it's stillmethod.com. So we'll write a book soon. My wife's almost has her CFP. Once she gets that done, then we'll write a book. So she just wants to get that test done.
Very cool. Well, appreciate all the thoughts and perspective today, Brandon. Enjoyed having you on the show.
Oh, thanks. I loved being here, Liam.